why is it that you have an audience of young, energetic, intelligent people listening to a successful sales guru who's divulging their secret ways of sales, and yet sales training is at between 90 and 97% failure? The human mind only has one need, and that is the need to express the authentic identity. The question is, what is that? Well, there's tools to find out. And what we use is objects, people, and events that express who we are. And I'm not going to make a judgment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read the objects around you. And they're going to culminate into a sentence about you. And maybe what I can do is take my widget and language it in such a way that it resonates with his environment. And when I do that, there's a connection.
Well, welcome everyone to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of The Awakened Man and your host, Alan DeMonso. Here at The Awakened Man, our mission is to guide men to find and live their life purpose. And the challenge for many of us is figuring out what truly motivates us. And because of this struggle, we can't seem to answer this question, what is my why? And the reason I do this, and the reason why I would do anything in life, is because of that why. Well, today my guest is an expert on helping people discover their life purpose through a revolutionary system that he has developed. Before we get into all that, I want to remind you to hit like, subscribe, and share on your favorite platform so you can stay updated on our latest content while helping me grow the Awakened Man message. And for that, I want to say I'm truly grateful. And with that, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
So let's go back to that initial question that I asked. You know, the one about wanting to know what your life purpose is, or what is your why? And do you know what your why is? And, you know, for many of us, do we even know what living authentically would look like if we were truly living our why? And I suspect there's going to be a wide range of answers to that question. And it's understandable because as a species, I think we've been trying to answer that question for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So no matter the response, my guest today here is going to share some groundbreaking approach to answering life's deepest question. So allow me right now to introduce my guest. John Voris is a philosopher, and I know we're going to get into that a little bit, writer and a human motivations researcher. He graduated from the University of California at Berkeley with a degree in philosophy and has never stopped his quest for answers to the deep questions. And through his decades of work, John has invented a groundbreaking approach to personal inquiry that reveals a person's underlying motivation and what they are truly designed to do. So John's method accesses four major virtues of humanity, or life themes as he likes to call them, and how they are designed to bring us fulfillment in our lives. He discovered that happiness, motivation, and purpose represent a triad, powerful intertwined between our personality, and that for decades, American psychology has been incorrect in its cult of personality as it applies to human motivation and authentic life purpose. So we're going to learn a whole lot here today. So welcome to the show, John. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. This is quite an honor.
Well, it's an honor to have you here. I was so excited. As I was researching and getting ready to do our podcast today. And maybe, as you know, we do talk a lot also about being on a hero's quest, that every man is on their own hero's quest. So I thought we start off by you telling us about your hero's quest, especially your biggest obstacles, your greatest learnings, and how that paved the road to who you are today and what you do.
Well, like many stories, mine start off with a great deal of failure. When I was in college, I tried many door-to-door sales positions, in fact, 7, and I got fired 4 times in a row. And then I quit 3 times in a row because I just got too embarrassed. In the meantime, I had taken courses, read books. In those days, listened to tapes, didn't matter. Rejection had me by the throat. And I just couldn't do it. Gave up on sales completely. Later found myself in exactly the same position, many factors beyond my control. At any rate, and I decided I have nothing but 7 failures to look at. And now I've got the same position, door-to-door sales. I'm thinking, and I had a wife to support and a child.
Wow.
She did not work. She wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So I had to figure out what is going on because it didn't make any sense. Why is it that you have an audience of young, energetic, intelligent people listening to a successful sales guru who's divulging their secret ways of sales, and yet sales training is at between 90 and 97% failure? That means that that's the rate that people leave sales within 3 months or 6 months.
Wow.
That's the average. And so what's wrong? It doesn't make sense. So then I started thinking about back to my Berkeley days, and it's somewhat of what you might call a syllogism. If, let's say, if Tony knows how to sell and Tony teaches John how to sell, maybe John will be able to sell, maybe he won't. That's the design. It came from, if Tony knows how to tie shoes and Tony teaches his son how to tie shoes, his son will be able to tie shoes. What's the difference? That was my inquest, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
Discovered that it's easy. Sales is abstract. It's abstract. In the moment of the sale, when you decide, yes, I want it, it's just abstract. You're just thinking in your mind. When you're dealing with shoes, it's physical. So if you know how to tune a car, you teach me how to tune a car, I'll be able to do it. But if you're an artist and you are making lots of money on your art, you can spend a lifetime with me and I'll never even come close. Why? Because that's an abstract concept. That skill, that ability is inbred, and part of it is who you are and the way you look at life. And so that's what I've discovered was, in this country, the sales training industry is using a syllogism designed to generate physical results, designed to teach people physical results. So that was the disconnect. So now, to get around that, to show you the distinction, I'm gonna describe something, and you tell me when you think you might know what I'm saying. The father said, "Will he make it?" That's all you've got. Will he make it? But he's standing in a grassy field, and there happens to be a white rectangle on the ground in powder, and every 10 yards is another line. At the ends, there are 2 poles on the left and 2 poles on the right. So if the father's asking, will he make it? What might he mean?
That's a great question. Will he make it to the end? Will he? Yeah, that's a great question.
Well, will he make the kick, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you come up with. The fact is that you do.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yep.
So if you said, will he make the field goal? I never said that. But you did. So that's how you train people in sales. Because I'm teaching an abstract idea. And so I do want to interject another point. I don't like being called a philosopher only because it doesn't settle with me very well. My associates decided to do that, but most people are not really aware of what philosophy is. Philosophy is like a tool chest. It's full of language, and it's designed for us to understand abstract, invisible ideas. Now, if I were to ask you, do you think the death penalty is unfair? And you said, yes, that's your opinion. Now, if I said, why? Explain to me why. What you would do is you would intertwine your beliefs, your experiences, your understandings, maybe even real examples. And when you're doing that, you are in fact philosophizing. That's what it is. Now, we have to use abstract ideas in order to use it. So there's a philosophy of morality. It's fine. You might disagree with the results, but the philosophic approach is always consistent. The counterpart is mathematics. Mathematics is here for us to understand physical, visible objects. And that's what we do. Now, later on, they get into concepts, of course, but that's the function of math. So you've got the two. Philosophy and math have the identical function, but in different realms. One's abstract, one's physical. That's it. That's all it is. So when people say, well, how did you come up with these ideas? I said, well, from philosophy, that doesn't mean anything to them, right? That's not what's happening. So, and know that all science is based on philosophic assumptions.
That's for sure. Well, that's excellent. And even, asking the question and painting the picture there, you can tell that I'm not as abstract in thinking. And so it's interesting how that happened for me. And before we dive into your work, I wanted to talk a little bit about and have you discuss a little bit about the differences that you've found through your life's work between American and European psychological views on human motivation and what they are and how they do work differently.
It actually came in the 60s. The European psychologist and the American psychologist had started this conflict. With the way the Americans work is I'm looking for a mental disorder. So you come to me and I'll say, I'm going to listen to you and find out what's wrong. In Europe, I want you to sit down and just tell me about your life. So I'm looking for something wrong. They're not. They're looking for maybe there's something wrong, maybe there's not. And so that's the first difference. Second difference is the American approach is what they call analytic. It's you analyze constantly so that if Socrates is single and all single men are bachelors, and then Socrates is a bachelor, you can use that with schizophrenia or any other. And in Europe, though, their approach is, I just want to know who you are. I want to know your background, where you live, who you live with, what your past experience is, how you look at life, your worldview. All of these things, very different.
Yeah,
No
kidding. And I'm almost getting the picture that, so maybe, and hopefully I'm interpreting this right, would you suggest saying then that the European style is much more about looking for patterns and the underlying motivation versus already trying to problem solve,
Yes.
Where the American is trying to solve it already?
The American position is everything they do must be measurable.
Mm-hmm.
If you love, I can't measure that, right? There's so many things we do all day. In fact, what I tell my clients is we may live in the visible physical world, but we live and die for the invisible world of abstract ideas. You're here because of an idea, not because you like that chair, right?
True.
So that's obvious. And so what they do in America is they define illnesses. Do you have those symptoms? And then here is the approach to solving your issues. That's how they do it. Boom, 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 boom. And in Europe, it's called continental approach.
Mm-hmm.
It's more holistic. What does it mean to be human? That's how they start. And what is it that about a human being that where their existence, their authentic existence, really is running the show?
Yes.
So let's not talk about your behavior, which is measurable. I want to know what drives your behavior. Well, that's the European approach.
Yeah, much more of a almost feels like a spiritual experience and an inside out approach versus an outside in approach that the U.S. system seems to have. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, and also just know that there are books on this very topic of America versus the continent on issues of science, religion, psychology, philosophy, many areas, and that's being studied today.
Yeah, for sure.
So that made the difference between me look. Oh, the other issue is in this country, in sales, they teach someone what to look for, what to say, and the source for the sales environment is the sales rep. Okay. Now, what I do is I do the reverse. I have one book called Learn to Sell What They're Buying. And that's not done.
Mm-hmm.
Why not learn what they're buying first and then start the process? So how do you do that? Well, you find what their authentic motivation is. How do you do that? Well, the answer to that is, and this is getting to be somewhat complex, is the human mind only has one need, and that is the need to express the authentic identity. That's all we do, all day. You can't stop it. Question is, what is that? Well, there's tools to find out. And what we use is objects, people, and events that express who we are. So your background expresses where you are, expresses who you are.
Yeah.
And so my position is I want to take myself out of it, so it's not my opinion. And I'm not going to make a judgment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read the objects around you. And they're going to culminate into a sentence about you. Then what I do is as I repeat it in a very obscure way, because I'm trying to test myself. And did I find it? You don't know what I'm doing. And so that's how I used to sell, is I would go up to someone I didn't know. I'd look at what is their career, how do they behave in this environment? And maybe what I can do is take my widget and language it in such a way that it resonates with his environment. And when I do that, there's a connection.
Absolutely, because you're really pinpointing the core of who they are.
Right.
Perfect. Love that. So let's talk a little bit more about and explore this idea of emotions and feelings, and how in your work you really talk about how they're different. So tell us a little bit more about that piece, our emotions and feelings.
In most psychology books, especially in the United States, they either don't mention emotions or they say the feelings are culminated emotions. And they do that because emotions can't be tested.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't. Feelings can. Now, what I mean by tested is they can certainly put you on a lie detector test, for example, and regulate that. But I mean, the thing is, they're not going to really know what you're thinking. And so emotions are about engaging in our immediate world, and we have a reaction. And feelings is our judgment about those emotions. Mm-hmm. So if I say, oh, by the way, in that field is a lion, he's looking at you. I want you to know that. So then you think, oh my God, I got to really take care of myself. I'm going to get eaten up maybe. But what if I said, yeah, but there's bars in between you and that lion because we're in a zoo? It's totally different. Right. And so the first issue is I'm fear for myself. Second was I thought about my environment and realized I was really safe. So it's always feelings, emotions. Also, emotions tell others and yourself whether what you're experiencing is really realistic. So if I say, I don't know, I see a man standing behind you, and I think that's my long fast brother, and you look behind and there's nothing, that tells you that maybe I'm not really here. And I really don't know what's going on. And so emotions, we should be afraid of what we should be afraid of what deserves to be afraid of, like spiders and snakes and things like that. Right. But if we're afraid of a flower pot, then we're in trouble. So that's part of what emotions do. It really regulates our immediate reaction to the environment and safety and fear and flight, etc. Then we think about it.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
But the feelings really do start to define the emotion.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, right? Because The feelings are what we've embodied now, and it's built on those experiences. So I like how you put that together. I'd like to get into your work now and talk about why authentic systems, the work that you're doing, is different from a personality test or a profile test.
Well, I gave a little bit of hint there. Personality profile tests really do show how we express ourselves. How. Now, also, you can go to your parents and you will find that, gee, when it comes to my dad and how he approaches this subject, I kind of did the same thing. You're going to find that, not 100% of the time, but you're going to find it. But then on the other hand, I kind of do this just like my mom does. She is concerned about these issues, and I am too. Then you're going to have yourself, which is a culmination of the two. So that is genetic epistemology. Genetically, we set ourselves up, the human body is set up to receive information and learn from it. But we're learning from the genetic predispositions from our parents first. And then we create our own worldview.
That makes complete sense.
Start.
Yeah. Let's go into a little bit about these. We talked in the opening there about these 4 life themes or life archetypes, I should say. And I thought you'd tell us a little bit about what the themes are and how you use them in your work.
Well, back to why so many people in sales training fail. I began to think to myself, well, what are people like? Well, one is they're very curious. They really are connected to what's fair, right and wrong. And they always want to be in action. They want to change the environment. And out of that, they have a sense of self-awareness. Mm-hmm. What we do out here in the world, the physical world, makes us aware of who we are, and then we apply our moral structure to our behaviors. Okay. So I took that and I said, well, if you're curious, if you extended that out, you're eventually going to earn wisdom. If you take fairness, what you're really talking about is justice, which is the expansion of that concept, justice. And when it comes to change and being in action, you're really exhibiting your power. Okay. And through all of that, you have a sense of well-being. Because when you are expressing your authentic identity, it changes from I can do something to I could do something to I should do something, and finally it lands on I must. Mm-hmm. I must. When you have that feeling, I must, you have just tapped into your authentic identity, your authentic motivation. And so that's how I came about this. Mm-hmm. But in my studies, I came across, it's called UNESCO, United Nations Educational Science and Cultural Organization. And it consists of 193 countries. And it's all about trying to initiate global peace, education, well-being on a global level. And so they did a study and took several years and lots of money. And they came up with, there's 4 pillars of education. You need to know how to learn. You need to learn how to do your power. You have to learn how to get together, which is fairness. And out of that, you're going to learn what it means to be human and be who you are. So UNESCO, I ran across that around 2000. I didn't even know it existed. I started this in 1980. So what I did is I've always tried to come up with more information that can validate what I discovered. And so this, the fact that huge corporation, international, came up with the same, you might say, domains of what it means to be human, that is a standard that is untouched.
Excellent, excellent. So why wouldn't this, like a system like you've developed, this authentic systems, why wouldn't it be taught anywhere else? And maybe we've touched on it earlier, but I'm curious as to why we haven't learned about this until today.
Well, first of all, I don't get myself out in the world that much. I do research. And so I've been, as you can imagine, I've got these books, but also I spent years behind that in doing research. So I don't get out that much. Then next is when you think about people, psychologists, psychiatrists, educators, they're busy living their own life. And they have appointments all day and they keep up with the latest journals, but there's a lot that they're not going to explore. And a good example of this is I have ADHD. And I go to the pharmacist and I say, okay, I'm going to buy me some speed and Adderall. And so the pharmacist came up to me and said, this has nothing to do with ADHD, and this will not help you in any way, shape, or form. I look at him like, where have you been? Under a rock somewhere? I really couldn't believe it. And I'm thinking, you're telling people this? So what happens is people might get educated 20 years ago, have a profession, they do keep in touch with the latest, not a lot, not outside of their area, and they do miss a lot. That's one. The other one, we're back to analytic approach and the holistic approach, continental. Another big one is they need to follow a certain guideline in order to be paid. Okay, so you have the statistical manual of mental disorders.
Yeah,
and it's the Bible that's throughout the whole country, and it has these very specific requirements, like I talked about. And what you have to do is you have to outline that in your notes when you submit to the state, and they have to see that reference or it's not being considered.
Interesting. Wow. That's so interesting, right? You've done so much work with this, and you've been help us to get a better handle on what kind of drives our motivation. But how do we apply this? Now, you've heard talk about, I know you do a lot of work in sales, but I'm wondering, how would we apply it in other aspects of our life, in personal and professional life?
Once you know your authentic motivation, it touches everything you do. Your relationships with other people, your career, why do you have energy, why you don't have energy, why you do argue with certain people and you don't others. Good example is I do couples. And so I had a power wife and a love husband, and it did not work. That's oil and water. The reason why is because the love person is always looking at life through that lens. Power person is always looking at change. And so the problem is they don't ever connect. Though what does connect is a wisdom spouse and a power spouse, because the power person needs the wisdom to have the power. And interesting enough, the wisdom people don't want the power. They don't. And so they get along wonderfully. So when I have couples come to me, I go through a process of assessment, and I ask them certain questions to find out their authentic identity. And they find it. I help them discover it. And once they see that, a lot of times they just solve their problem right there in the room because, oh, now I get it. Why do power people and wisdom people sometimes argue? Well, you can just imagine the differences between them. And when they touch on those subjects, they're going to be at odds. But on the other hand, why do they get along so well? They've been married for 25 years. Well, what's really going on is they're really holding up, giving each one the foundation of the other.
That makes a lot of sense.
How about bosses? You want to get along better with your boss, better on the phone when you're talking to clients. Doesn't matter because you're coming from a specific position. Like, for example, justice. Yeah. If you're a justice person, you are going to speak justice to a power person. Sometimes a power person is not going to appreciate that. There's too much caring in your voice. They want action. The other thing is, a lot of power people are not afraid of being disliked. When it comes to leadership, you can't be afraid of being disliked.
That's true.
And that's really important. So I don't want to lead people unless it's in my authentic, which is another issue too. If you're a wisdom person, you don't want to be a leader in a love domain or a justice domain. It won't work.
Right.
So getting back to the four quadrants, you can look easily at the relationship and a career. Another one is what I'm really working on mostly is 17, 18-year-olds, 16-year-olds. They're looking for a career. They really don't know what they want to do. That's something like 80% of kids 17, 18 years old.
Yeah.
So what I can do, my limit is 13. After 13, I can assess people, and because they're minors, I have a parent, and I go through the process, and the parent is just amazed at what we discover, and he discovered or she discovers the same thing. And I've got many testimonials of the parent wants the best for the child, but they don't understand what motivates that child. And then once they see it, the whole world opens up. And then they say, okay, gee, you don't want to be an attorney? You'd rather be a child psychologist? Fine. Now I see it. So they're going to devote money to the right college. They're going to go, they're going to get great grades, and they're going to become who they really want to be. But they have to know their authentic identity. Now, sometimes people can stumble on it. And you know that you've stumbled on it when you're really happy and content. And you really feel like you must do, like you're doing right now. You feel like I could be doing a lot of things. You could be having a great time bowling or going to games or whatever. But you're here because you have a must. It's past can, past could, and past should. It's a must. You're here. And so am I.
Yep.
So our authentics are being fully expressed. When they're not, that's when you get the anxiety and the disconnect and the floundering. So with these kids, it really helps out to find out what really motivates them. And I have this one young man was going to college to become a highway patrolman like his dad. And he got closer and closer and closer to graduation. He started dropping out of classes. He started getting poorer grades. Well, why is that happening? And nobody could figure this out. And so finally he quit college. So the dad called me up and said, I want you to assess him. I got to find out what's going on. So I did. So this is how it works. And it's so interesting. He admired his dad and he loved what he did. But what bothered him is a justice person does not like to cause conflict in the lives of others. So as a policeman, a highway patrolman, all you're going to do is give out tickets. That is the reason, but he didn't know that. So I said, is there any other class you liked? Oh, yeah, victimology. I loved it. So is there another area you'd like to work at? And so he decided to work on helping people get back into society. Rather than being a cop, rather than being an outside cop as a highway patrolman, he just wanted to work in the offices and take care of people from that position. So he started taking more psychology courses. He graduated and he did exactly that. And he did it all in 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is information I wish I would have known 25 years ago. And although I kind of think in my first career as a chef, I was probably still living my life purpose. But even more so today, being doing the work we're doing. And so I wanted to ask you, now that you've done all this work and in this research, and how has it changed your life personally and affected you?
Well, I can read people. I turn it off. When I mean read people, I mean I'm reading the archetypes only. And but the archetypes are everywhere because that's what objects are for. There are catalysts. They're catalysts of meaning. So even if something doesn't have a great meaning, it has a meaning that doesn't have a great meaning. You can't escape it. So if everything around you has a meaning to you, all I need to do is look at what's around you and put that together. So many, many times I have, well, in sales, I averaged a 12 out of 20 cold calls.
Wow.
Selling. Now the average is 3%. So the way I did it is, as I went down, in fact, I was a member of Rotary and we had to get donations. And so I walked down a street and I look, everything around me are symbols of meaning. And so you can look at the building, you can say, okay, attorneys, let's say a flower shop, whatever it is, that tells me something about who's inside. And then I start talking to them. And then I look at what personal items they have. And what I can do is start to extrapolate who they are in the sense of what probably motivates them. And then I test it. And if it still works, then I use that language to promote what I'm selling. So if I walked into a beauty salon, I would say, do you know Agnes a couple blocks down? Oh, you do? Oh, God, she got this ham, huge ham from me. And she's going to have a great big party. Have you ever been to one of her parties? Oh, no. Oh, well, yeah, she bought a ham and she bought this and that and this and that. Well, so that is the language she is.
Right.
You see, the person I'm speaking to. I would never do that in an attorney's office. I would never do that in an accounting office. Rather, I would be very factual and very linear in my presentation. And I would have no emotion. And I would look straight at the eye. Right. And for that reason, I'm able to become a symbol that represents who they are in the moment. And that's how they opened up. That's how I gain rapport.
Yeah, that's the word I had in my mind going, is your ability to gain rapport based on observing what was being presented in front of you, whether it be the objects, how they're holding themselves, everything. And I think, and the other thing I think what's so important that I'm hoping our listeners are picking up on is how much of a connection the work that you're talking about, that if we take this piece, this work, and embody it in ourselves, how much of a deeper connection we can get with our friends or our colleagues, our family members. And some of the work that I do does involve, helping men struggling, going through a significant emotional event. And we're not always great at dealing with that, but being able to give them a tool like you've developed to help them figure out and being able to reconnect with themselves first.
Sure.
And then ultimately with others.
Yeah. So I watch the behavior, but I'm looking for the motivation, the archetype motivation that is pushing the behavior. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, it turns out to be very, very accurate enough for me to do what I need to do. If I want to sell someone or I want to convince someone of something, at least I know what kind of language to put it in. And so I have a better chance. It's not 100%, but a better chance. Oh, and I don't know why the word escaped me. That young man turned out to be a probation officer.
Oh, nice.
And it's just, I have to clear that up. It bothered me. I couldn't think of it.
No worries.
Yeah. So he just wanted to help people make the transition. And so that was a real nice success story. But yeah, so then I'm looking at a chef and I'm looking at what you're doing now. The commonality there is creativity.
Yes,
Chefs
sir.
create.
Yep.
You're creating now. And that expression is vital for you. And you can never work and be happy at a warehouse, for example, or on a machine. Doesn't work. And the other is that you're delivering abstract ideas. All right?
Yeah.
So I would make my descriptions abstract if I really wanted to have us understand each other on a deeper level.
Interesting.
And then I would read what's behind you And what are those? Are those achievement awards? Or,
Yes, a few of them for sure.
uh-huh. And so, and what?
Those are all my Toastmasters behind me. And then actually what's facing me is my culinary career. So yeah.
Uh-huh. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was in Toastmasters myself, but only because of finding how bad I was at the time. But so congratulations.
Yeah.
And so you see, so now that tells me how much communication is important to you, of course. And but creativity and change, and I see how you're funneling that. This is why I really enjoy your program. It's because you're taking your creativity and you're funneling it through communication. Language is extremely important to you, and you can change the world through it. And you're going to do that through absorbing the experiences of other people and getting that across to others.
Well, that's excellent. You pegged it, and we've only been together for about 45 minutes.
Well, that's what actually, when I was in person, I worked much easier because in fact, in my seminars and the courses I give, I would say, okay, tell me if you were confronting a master carpenter and they have to pass tests, they're going to be in the business at least 20 years. And let's say this person works with finishing on a yacht, finishing work. So my question to you is, would that person have a sense of accuracy?
Absolutely.
What detail?
Yes, you bet.
Okay. Patience?
Oh, lots of patience.
Okay. So now would it be possible to have a 20-year veteran carpenter be inaccurate, have no concept of detail, and be impatient?
Not for 20 years.
Thank you. Right. So you're not a carpenter and neither am I.
Yeah.
By knowing who I'm not, I know who you are.
Mm.
I'm not a carpenter. So I think to myself, well, what is it about it that they are? And I'm going to first thing think of, in some senses, who I'm not, which is, no, I'm not that kind of accurate person. I like theory. And I'm not that detailed in the physical. In the abstract, I can. And so people can get a real good idea of who other people are because they had to ask these same questions of themselves.
Right.
Are they detailed? Are they accurate? Are they patient? So if you're not patient, you're going to quit, right? Yeah. And or get fired. And so these are characteristics of you. So what I'm going to do with you is I'm going to describe my widget in accuracy, detail, and I'm going to show you that you're going to have a very long-term benefit because you're a patient. So that's kind of like the beginning of it. But you can use that with any career, and you're going to be accurate enough to do what you want. If you want to convince them of something, talk themselves into something, or even sell them something.
Absolutely, for sure. Well, of everything that we've talked about today, what is one thing that you would recommend as a takeaway that you want our listeners to remember?
That each of us that we're all unique. We all consist of love, justice, wisdom, and power. And the key to the happiness and success is to understand your authentic identity and express it to the fullest. And watch when you do something because you can do it. Somebody told you you could do it. Someone told you you should do it. And then look at what are you doing because you feel you must. And when you have that feeling, you must consistently repeat that experience. And that's what's going to bring you the joy and the happiness. And you're going to have, for men, that's where their power is.
Yeah. Love that. Love it. Well, I want to say thank you so much, John, for spending time with me today. And I know we've unpacked quite a bit of stuff here about the mystery, about finding our purpose and living an authentic life. But how would our guests get a hold of you and participate in one of your programs?
So get on the internet, and I'm authentic-systems.com. And from there, you can scroll through and get an assessment. Contact me directly. And that's John at authentic-systems.com. And I can set up an initial discussion, half hour, 20 minutes of what's going on, and see if what your needs are. And I do sculpt everything individually. And then we just take it from there. But you're going to learn why you do the things you do. And that's something that everyone's exploring.
Absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. I'm going to make sure I put that information in the show notes, as well as links to your books. People can get an opportunity to get your books. And because I'm right after this, we're done this, I'm running out to buy that and buy your books. And that is just, they just sound so phenomenal. And I want to thank you again for spending time with me today. It was just a great learning.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your patience, because I told you I can talk all day long.
It was outstanding. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.